And so I'm here to talk labs. I think a couple of you obviously recognize me, and truly, sincerely, I won't take it personally if you feel like you've heard this a gazillion times and you need to leave, because you've heard this so many times. Others, I really think that it is a mind-blowing concept that you need to get blood, urine, hair, stool, skin testing type done when you get a diagnosis or suspected diagnosis of Parkinson's. So I am going to share my screen as soon as Susan gives me permission to do so.
Getting permission right now.
Susan, it still says it's disabled. I don't know if,
All right, we're working on it.
okay. Hmm. Um, so even I'll just clarify a point of, clarification is I don't even think it was that my first love was nutrition. I think my first love was this things that are obvious, but we are oblivious, right? Like I like these aha things that are right under our nose. When I tell people that my research says that the more money you have, the earlier you go to bed, the more friends you have, the more vegetables you eat, the better outcomes you have with Parkinson's. Nobody is surprised, right? And like, nobody is surprised by that information. And yet, when you got diagnosed, I don't believe many of your doctors sat you down and said, "Hey, listen, we need you to get a bunch of friends, early bedtimes, fruits and vegetables, financial stability, or, like I don't think and so this, my initial love of nutrition was truly Linus Pauling, who's the only person in history to get two unshared Nobel Prizes. But my real first love was him, and on his deathbed, he was saying, "What you are all calling psychiatric and neurologic disorders are actually nutritional deficiency syndromes for all of these reasons." They have skin, they have bowel, they have behavior. Behavior is just a symptom of a metabolic and underlying metabolic disorder. And so I was just so intrigued by his logic. Like he was rebellious and logical all in one swoop, right? And that's what I like, right? Like if we can combine rebellion with logic, that's what got me excited. And here, Susan, I still can't share. You've made me co-host or
Yeah,
host.
yeah. Now you are. Now you are.
Okay, so let
Okay.
me try. There we go. Okay. Okay. So first, I just want to set the stage. And for as an epidemiologist, what I do is I study populations, and I have been studying 3,000 people over the last 13 years, your behaviors. Every 6 months, I ask you who you are, how you are, what you're doing. And then in my clinical practice, I have another five or 600 patients who I took all of their blood and hair and urine testing and correlated it with Parkinson's symptoms. And together we have this really, really comprehensive, nice database. And I can kind of tell you why Parkinson's disease progresses of all of the variables that we are studying. I can see which ones are causing, there are things that we aren't accounting for, like genetics are not being accounted for here. But of all of the things that we are accounting for, we cannot change age, we cannot change gender, and we cannot change disease duration. We're kind of stuck with sex, age, and disease duration. We can change your attitude, your sense of isolation, stress, loneliness, friendships. We can influence sleep. What we are talking about here today or biomarkers. This is the whole point of today's talk is this has been neglected, I think, for the last 200 years. It's still being neglected now, and it's a huge chunk of the pie. You all, I bet you most people on this call could raise their hands and say, I have personally felt the benefits of more physical activity. I upped my exercise game, and like, I don't care what anyone's research study tells me. I'm telling you, when I started exercising, I started feeling better. Most of you could say that to be true. What we are talking about today is twice that. Like that's how potent biomarkers are. It is crazy that neurologists have not been believing in biochemistry or have been neglecting it or ignoring it. Supplements, when I came out to New York and we had this conversation, I kind of talked about the physical activity, the supplements, the diet, and financial health. Poor people do worse than rich people. Susan was just talking about diet. That's the Pro 21 diet. So the last talk I gave, I covered a lot of this other stuff. What we wanted to do today is a little bit of a deeper dive into this biomarkers conversation. Okay, so this idea of a perturbation means something's messed up. Even if a lab is messed up in you or if it's messed up in Parkinson's, we don't know that A caused B, right? Just because two things go together doesn't mean one caused the other. And and even if A caused B, it doesn't mean that if we changed it, it would change the outcome. So I just need to warn everybody that you are kind of getting a sneak peek, early glimpse at what things look like before the full story has been told. But this is the first look at what do blood measures, hair measures look like in Parkinson's disease outcomes. Okay, so this whole concept of a Parkinson's panel, I just wanted to tell you how I came up with it. The way I used to run my practice was patients would come in, I would meet them, they would tell me their story, they would tell me their symptoms, and I found myself ordering almost the exact same labs in every single person I saw. And they would go pay for the labs and they would come back and discuss them. And at some point, it was just like a light bulb where I was like, that's ridiculous. I'm just going to make every new patient get all of these labs before they walk in the front door, and we can hit the ground running. And that is how I've been doing it for years. So I understand the concept of waiting until you suspect a patient, is deficient for vitamin D before ordering their vitamin D. I was just missing too many things. I don't have telepathic skills that allow me to tell you this person's vitamin D deficient, this person's B12 deficient. Susan said to speak slowly. Okay, so this is what the Parkinson's panel looks like. This is available to all of you. Um, if you do this through your insurance, through LabCorp or Quest, this entire panel, first of all, does not include the hair test. Even if you do it through your conventional insurance program, it will not include the hair part of this. And the rest of this is anywhere from $1,700 to $1,900 is what most people end up paying. If you have great insurance, you've already met your deductible, whatever, great. I don't really care where you get your blood sugar, your homocysteine tested. I just want you to see this is what I test for my patients once a year before I meet them and once a year. So you can get this anywhere you want, but this is what we offer. And so before we get into the individual ones, what I want to do is have a little conversation about reference ranges. So B12 is the example we're going to use here. And this is a recent paper that was done on how to use blood work to determine B12 status. And so you'll see that the lab says first line laboratory testing says if a person is higher than 350, that means they're good, right? And if their methylmalonic acid is less than 280, they're probably good. And so what we are looking at here, let me show you, this is in the general population. This is what your physicians are being taught if they are keeping up on this research. But look at this. Here is if we look in a group of people with Parkinson's disease, right? Say a person who has a 500, if that's higher than 350, they should be fine, right? Look at this. If a person has a 580 or higher, there is a 70% chance that they don't have dementia by year 10. But if their B12 is below 580, there is a 0% chance that they are not demented by year 10. Right? And so here, if we were using these lab reference ranges, do you see if your numbers were 400, say you're 400, your doctor is going to say you're fine. I followed the algorithm. 400 is absolutely fine. I don't know what your doc, why some alternative medicine doc is telling you you need more. And the reason is because in Parkinson's disease, you need more. First of all, just in terms of repair, recovery, your needs and demands are higher, and your absorption is worse if you have Parkinson's disease. And so in Parkinson's, 300, 400 is nowhere near enough, right? Like we really have to demand, and I'm not here telling you I have all the answers. I'm saying, all of you who have been are advocates out in your community, one of the things we need to really start advocating is Parkinson specific reference ranges. Okay, so here is showing that 100% of people who had a B12 level below 400 when they first were diagnosed had dementia by year 10, is what this graph says. All right. So the other thing I want to say too is there is a way in research to follow people over time. You don't need to do a double-blind placebo-controlled trial to learn something, but we do not have enough data from this to kind of tell a story to be able to say A causes B. This is just a slice in time. Um, like smoking, we have never done a double-blind placebo-controlled trial of tobacco smoking, right? Like we've never taken 100 18-year-olds and said, okay, I want 50 of you to smoke for the next 10 years. I want 50 of you to not smoke for 10 years, and we're going to see which group gets cancer. Like we've never done that. But still, we know that smoking causes cancer, and there are a whole bunch of ways that we know that. It's called causal inference. And there is a way to use observational data to find associations. It's just we aren't there yet. If more of you join this study, MVP study, more people who join and the longer you stay enrolled, the better, the closer we get to causal inference. Okay. So we are going to have a little statistics class here. I don't know if I want water or coffee for this. Okay, so a bell curve is in reference to the distribution of people in the population. And what we are looking at is most people are normal. The majority of people are somewhere in the center. A few people are going to be really high and a few people are going to be really low, but most people are somewhere in the center. So in Parkinson's disease, we see you all have a trend towards deficiency. So what we see is this is a normal person. This is what normal looks like. And I don't mean this is actually this is a non-Parkinson spouse, I believe is where this came from. And so this is what you would expect to see in a typical person, and normal is defined by one standard deviation from the mean, the green zone. Everyone starts in the middle. If you go to the right, it means you're above average. If you go to the left, it means you're below average. But normal is somewhere in the middle. In Parkinson's disease, everybody is low in everything. Maybe not everybody but that's what I'm looking for. That's why I'm asking you to do the hair test, is these people are in worse shape than these people, right? I'm working really hard to try and figure out why. And there are some things we can do about it, some things we can't do it, but I'm telling you, for $89, this is a tremendously valuable type amount of information to have. It's non-invasive. You can do it, the inch of hair closest to your scalp represents the last 3 months of mineral exposure. And like everything else, it's imperfect. Like you interpret it, if you're using Head and Shoulders Selsun Blue shampoo, your selenium levels are going to be high. So external contamination is a real thing. People with copper pipes have higher copper levels. That's fine. We interpret it accordingly. But in terms of screening for nutritional deficiencies, this is a cheap, easy way to cast a wide net and catch a lot of things. So before I go into the deficiencies, which are really what I'm interested in, the data was surprisingly strong for people with high arsenic doing worse. So arsenic is coming from rice naturally occurring in the soil, and for whatever reason, rice absorbs more arsenic than most crops. Even rice products like sake and things that you would use rice out of. So anyway, I think we are being exposed. I don't know how any of us would know that we are being exposed if we weren't testing for it. So anyway, I have now that I've seen these data, I've certainly come across a patient a week, probably, whose arsenic levels are unusually high, and we have a conversation about where it's coming from. Here shows the data. I don't know that we're going to get into it, but the short and sweet of it is this is the association between Parkinson's symptoms and hair arsenic levels, but everybody's pretty low. So statistically, we can do this fancy thing where we kind of stretch it out. The numbers no longer make sense, but you can see the higher person's hair arsenic levels, the worse their Parkinson's symptoms. And so this is enough for us to say, hey, we can see clear as day it's a problem. Let's find your arsenic, find out where it's coming from. Let's test other people in your family. Let's clean up your diet. I think wine, I think chocolate has some arsenic, maybe. We'll talk afterwards. Moving on to mineral deficiencies in hair, magnesium is one that is super, super easy. It is safe, it is reliable. A lot of people have a magnesium deficiency. Parkinson's patients have lower magnesium levels. Even in non-Parkinson's populations, magnesium supplements are improving cognition and sleep and mood and focus. So I am a big fan of magnesium supplements, but I think money is tight. I just said that financial stability is important, and you can't be spending tens of thousands of dollars on supplements that you don't need, right? We have to pick and choose our battles. And so, in my mind, doing a hair test allows us to find the people who have the low magnesium levels, and those are the people who need the hair test. But what we are looking at here for all of these graphs I'm going to show you as the lower a person's pro-PD score, the lower this is to 0, the fewer symptoms a person has. Low pro-PD scores are associated with few symptoms and high quality of life. So magnesium is an easy one. The other one that is easy and fun and obvious and completely neglected is cobalt. Many of you think cobalt blue in your paints, your glassware, things like that. 27% of you are walking around with a cobalt deficiency. And the reason that is important is because this big molecule over here on the left, what we are looking at is B12. This is what B12 looks like. So when we measure B12 in your blood, we are measuring this big molecule. You may or may not have B12. Whether you have it or not, if the B12 that you have does not have cobalt in the center, your gun is firing blanks. B12 cannot do what B12 does if it doesn't have cobalt. You might have B12, but for the B12 to be active, you can't have a cobalt deficiency, like 27.3% of my patients do, right? So one of the reasons I'm giving a hair test is I am screening. Could you have a cobalt deficiency? So that's what I'm looking for there. There's a whole class in Parkinson's school on B12 deficiency, and I talk about all the ways that one can tell if they are B12 deficient, and this was one of them. If hair cobalt says you're low, consider it a B12 deficiency. I think I have a similar slide in here later on also, but this is the B12. This is the way I give people cobalt. For my patients who are low in cobalt, the best strategy I have found to raise their cobalt level is this version of B12. It is a very, very, very high quality, very high dose form of B12, the B12 that the body uses. And each one of these B12s has a cobalt right in it. I don't care where you buy it. This is our clinic, Seattle Integrative Medicine. I do not make any kickback or money off of any supplements you buy anywhere. I don't care where you get them, but this is what I use with my patients here. Ooh, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Okay. Um, okay. So moving the cobalt brings us on to a conversation about blood and B12. So the reason we care about cobalt being low is because without cobalt, your B12 doesn't work. And the reason we care about B12 deficiency is because there are 400 studies, I'm not exaggerating, that suggest B12 deficiency puts people at increased risk of getting Parkinson's and worse outcomes, right? By a whole bunch of different mechanisms. So here's the issue. When you get old, 60 and up, 65 and older, when you get old, you become at increased risk for a B12 deficiency, right? You add some stress, some bowel issues on there, gets even worse. Number one autoimmune disease in the country, in the United States, is autoimmune attacking the part of your gut that allows you to absorb B12. On top of that, we have this other issue where carbidopa isn't even on here, but carbidopa and levodopa interfere with your body's ability to absorb folate, B12, and B6. So if you are taking carbidopa, levodopa, you are compromising your ability to use the things that keep your homocysteine level down. If you get low in B12, B6, folate, betaine, any of these B vitamins that make the machinery work, your homocysteine levels start to go up and you start to get cognitive decline and faster Parkinson's progression. I am not suggesting this for the first time. This is not my idea. There are dozens and dozens of studies over the last 30 years that say the higher a person's homocysteine, the worse their Parkinson's outcomes. Here's and all our data is doing is supporting this. We're saying the same exact thing. We are seeing the same thing in our data. The higher a person's homocysteine, the worse their outcomes. No surprises there. The other way to tell if somebody is B12 deficient is if their methylmalonic acid levels are high. Either one. You don't need all of them. If any one of these is messed up, you have a B12 deficiency. So homocysteine makes a ton of sense. We already talked about the cobalt one. The methylmalonic acid is interesting. I have been doing this with my patients for years, and the reference range says anything below 300 is fine. And so that is capping people right here. So I have only been catching people who are really high. What I wasn't, when you stretch it out a little bit, I can't get over how lowers better, lowers better, lowers better, lowers better. I mean, 100 is better than 200. And it's pretty obvious and it is statistically significant. So if one wants to know, do I have enough B12? What we are really looking for is methylmalonic acid and homocysteine. That's and hair cobalt. Hair cobalt, homocysteine, and methylmalonic acid. Those are really the three things that tell us, do I have enough B vitamins to do what I'm supposed to do? B12 is not statistically significant. There are a few people, if you have a low B12, that can tell us something, but more is not better. If your doctor says, "Oh, Sally, your B12 levels are so high, you can stop now," just ignore them or send them to go watch this recording or have them go look up B12. But something like 80% of people with a B12 deficiency have a normal or high serum B12. I cannot say this clear enough. It is such a complicated thing to explain. If you are a doctor, the average doctor has 2 to 4 hours of nutrition education, right? If you are a doctor who wants to know a patient's B12 status, it makes perfect sense to order the test called B12. It just so happens to be this is the least accurate, least useful measure. It is not statistically significantly linked to outcomes. Your B12 level does not matter nearly anything compared to whether or not your methylmalonic acid is high or your homocysteine is high. That's what tells us if the B12 is working. This is me just proving I'm not to myself that I'm not nuts. I mean, I keep looking it up in the medical literature. It seems clear as day to me. Um, Online, there's an ER doctor I follow, Dr. Rick Pescatori, who was talking about to other ER doctors about how teenagers or people are using whippets, nitrous oxide, they're inhaling it and it depletes you of B12, and how important it is that doctors be on the lookout for this B12 deficiency induced by nitrous oxide, laughing gas. And he in the middle of the video he says, and stop, don't think that B12 is good enough. You can't use a B12. You have to do a homocysteine and a methylmalonic acid if you're going to assess a person's B12 levels. And I just gave him a shout out and said, thank you. Like the Whippet conversation is a public health service. You've got a public health service buried within a public health announcement, right? Like, thank you for teaching doctors that you need to do the methylmalonic acid and B12. So it's real. I just don't know why it's not been taught or people haven't got it. This is, in my personal opinion, 20 some 25 years of practice. This is the closest I've found to awesome in terms of what one-stop shopping, two-stop shopping. The number one cause of a B12 deficiency is the inability to absorb the B12 that you swallow. So the only way to get it is shots or dissolved under your tongue. This is a huge dose. It's really inexpensive. If you dissolve this B12 onto your tongue every day and swallow one of these active B complexes per day, that's what I do with my patients. And I would say 97% of them, this is all they need to lower their homocysteine, lower their methylmalonic acid, raise their hair cobalt. This is probably $17, $18 a month. And for most everybody, it gets the job done. So if for some reason you don't have any hair, you have alopecia, you have dreadlocks, you have some reason why you can't submit a hair test, I would say this probably would be the best way to cover your bases just in case. I can't imagine any harm coming from those two things. That is almost a perfect formula, but what is still missing from there is something called betaine. To make all of the homocysteine stuff run perfectly, you also need a nutrient called betaine. Just know it comes in beets and spinach. Have a ton. I love spinach and beet salad. I could live off of that. So just know that spinach and beets are a great way to get betaine, which is missing from that awesome formula I just showed you. Okay, so moving on to cholesterol, anybody who has been hanging out with me for years has heard me say that what is good for the brain might not be good for the heart. And I have a lot of patients who are have very serious concerns about protecting their cardiovascular system, right? Like they've already had 2 heart attacks, they have 4 stents, they've had 2 strokes, everybody in their family died of heart disease by the age of 38. I mean, if that is your story, we have to be really, really worried about your heart disease risk, right? For a lot of people, there's kind of this preventative, hey, we don't want you to get heart disease, so the lower the cholesterol, the better. However, the problem is in heart disease, it is true. The lower the cholesterol, that tends to be the better for heart disease. But in all-cause mortality, just your risk of dropping dead, people around 200, 220 tend to do the best. And in Parkinson's in particular, our data kind of supports that. The higher a person's blood cholesterol, the fewer symptoms they have. Again, I will point out it is not statistically significant. For those of you who are on statins and freaking out about this, I think it's worth a conversation with your doctor. But I want to point out the trend is clearly there. The higher your cholesterol, the better people did. It was not statistically significant. What this means is there's a 17% chance that what we are seeing here is just chance. And the reason this is important is because most of the body's cholesterol is actually in the brain. The brain needs a ridiculous amount of cholesterol, not only for it to act as a steroid precursor for hormones and neurotransmitters, but also as insulation on the wiring. So these nerves transmit signals, and the myelin that wraps around them and insulates the signals is made of cholesterol. So cholesterol, when you get low cholesterol, your brain can suffer. So I think there's a balance between too little or too high. But what you really need to pay attention to and know is the real benefit happens around 60 cholesterol. Good cholesterol, 65 and higher is ACEs, right? If your good cholesterol is above a 60 or 65, your Parkinson symptoms are incredibly low. What we see is below 65. Every little notch, it gets lower and lower and lower below 65, the more Parkinson symptoms a person had. And almost everyone on this call, even if you've never worked with me, even if you didn't do your labs via the Parkinson panel, I bet you every person on this call has an HDL on themselves someplace. And so now we have a Parkinson's relevant outcome measure to strive for. You have to have it 65 or up. So when I looked into why this was, I was shocked at how much research there is on good cholesterol's role in brain health. In fact, I talked to a movement disorder neurologist last week who told me that he thought 40 or 50% of Parkinson's disease wasn't actually Parkinson's, it was cardiovascular disease. I mean, it was a really big number and it was kind of a bold claim that he made. But when I went in and started looking, there is a lot of reason to say he might be onto something. The relationship between HDL clearing alpha-synuclein. I mean, that's fascinating. And lucky for us in the Parkinson's world, the cardiovascular folks have decades on us. They have been working for years to figure out what does a person need to do to get their good cholesterol up. Oh, you can have more olive oil. You can get more aerobic activity. You have to drip with sweat. You have to get sweaty. You want high intensity. You have to be short on breath. It has to be a struggle to hold a conversation. Um, Fiber, fiber, fiber. And it's an easy thing to change. It's cheap. You can add some psyllium husk to your morning oatmeal and have your doctor test it again in a couple months. This Omega check is kind of exciting. This is another one that I just think is super right under our noses, low-hanging fruit for all patients to utilize. So LabCorp or a Quest, I'm sorry, Quest is available all throughout the country. And they now offer this particular lab called Omega Check. We're taking cholesterol. We're not talking cholesterol fats anymore. We are now talking the fats that make up the membranes of your cells. The test is really cheap. Here's the deal. Before you go asking your doctor for fatty acids, oh, Laurie said to ask about EPA and DHA and all these fatty acids. You very, very, very specifically want to ask for Omega Check. The Omega Check one is the good one. It's what we're talking about here, and it's about $25. If you just ask for the EPAs, DHAs, it's about 10 times more expensive, and it doesn't give us the information we want. Omega Check is the one we want. What we are just talking about is different fats of different shapes, of different sizes, have different bonds in different places, and that causes them to behave a little bit differently. That's what we're talking about when we're talking omega-6 or omega-3. Is the first double bond 6 carbons away, or is it 3 carbons away? Right? But that makes all the difference in the world in terms of behavior. So what we are talking about here is all of these lipids. These are every one of these little purple strings is a fatty acid. and how, which percentage of these are caused by inflammatory fats or anti-inflammatory fats changes how the behavior happens across cells. So it's not as simple as omega 6s are bad and omega 3s are good. You've all heard that, and we are in a second going to talk about the omega 6 to 3 ratio, but it is a little more complicated than that. 6s and 3s are both good. Omega 6 linoleic acid is found in nuts, in seeds, and the higher this number, the better you're doing, the fewer Parkinson symptoms a person has, and it is statistically significant. More walnuts is a really good thing, right? But if these same omega 6s if you're inflamed, or you can actually get this from chicken and eggs. If you're eating too many eggs or too much chicken, or your body's inflamed, you can turn your omega 6s to be inflammatory. And these are bad. The higher this is, the worse a person does, right? So just know it's not as simple as 6 is bad, 3 is good, but 3 is pretty universally awesome. Okay, so here's the ratio that we're talking about. This is probably one of the most important parts of this thing is 6 to 3 ratio really matters a ton, as does the EPA ratio is fish oil, and arachidonic acid is the inflammatory one I just told you about. Again, this is what we're talking about. What are you made of? What you are, what you eat. The ingredients that you put into the bread box shape what comes out. And that's actually what we are measuring. Your red blood cells live about 3 months. We are looking at your red blood cells and asking over the last 3 months, what are the lipid ingredients that you have been putting in? Are you made of pork and steak and eggs, or are you made of algae and fish and walnuts? Right? Like that's really what we're talking about here. And so here's the short and sweet of it. From all angles, omega 3s are good. The more omega 3 total, EPA, DHA, the higher your fish oil level, the fewer symptoms anybody has. I have numbers if you want to, what I am doing here is saying, listen, I don't think that a person, if we look at DHA fish oil, DHA is kind of expensive. No one loves taking fish oil. It looks to me that you're no better off to be a 4 than a 3, right? As long as you're a 3, or my superstars, the people who are doing the best are 3 and up. I suppose there might be some real superstars up here, but what I'm telling people is, hey, listen, as long as you get to a 3, let's call that good. So that's how I'm using these reference ranges, just so you know. That's how I drew my cutoff is where do things, below 3, it looks like people start getting worse, 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 worse. Once you get above 3, I see things stabilize. So I said, as long as your total omega 3s are above a 7, your DHA is above a 3, your EPA is above a 2, I'm happy. That's where people seem to be doing well. And again, for those of you who don't have access to these labs for whatever reason, maybe just take your fish oil as long as it doesn't interfere with anything else you're doing. Again, arachidonic acid is inflammatory. We're not going to get into all of this. Your body makes it. Some of you, it really does come from eating too many eggs and too much chicken. If your arachidonic acid levels are above a 10, I would absolutely change your diet and retest in a couple months. That's easy enough to do. Here are these ratios I told you, like it's kind of neat to see these 6 to 3 ratios. I told you that's what really matters, and that is there's less than a 1% chance we are wrong about this. People who have an omega 6 to 3 ratio below 7 are doing fabulous. People who have an arachidonic acid to EPA ratio below 10 are doing fabulous. And the lower, the better, right? So this is stuff that makes biologic sense. We've been tracking it, and now we have real Parkinson specific data that just seems easy to implement. Again, you radically increasing your fish intake or starting to take a spoonful of fish oil or some fish oil supplements is probably the easiest way to fix this. I mean, in terms of one-stop shopping, that would change all of the last seven things we just talked about. Vitamin D is easy, as you might expect. Vitamin D is very important in Parkinson's disease. People who are low in vitamin D get more Parkinson's. Once people get Parkinson's disease, the ones with lower vitamin D have more autonomic symptoms, worse mood, more cognitive symptoms, muscle weakness, balance, um, loss of smell. So there are a whole bunch of reasons for us to be concerned about low vitamin D and Parkinson's. But you can actually have vitamin D toxicity, and this is pretty awesome that this we saw the U-shaped curve between 60 and 80. If you're in Europe, it's 150 to 200, but here in the United States, it's the reference range unit is 60 to 80. Above 80, things start to get worse. Below 60, things start to get worse. I'm telling my patients to keep vitamin D between 60 and 80. Just to be fair, back to this idea that it's just a snapshot. It could just be that people with poor health stay inside more often. They have lower vitamin D. We get vitamin D from exposing our skin to sun, right? If you are on the computer all day, if you are inside your house, if your life is basically going from your home to your car to your car to your home, and you're not getting much sun to skin exposure, then you're not getting much vitamin D. Many of us live so far away from the equator, but even my patients in Florida who are tan and play pickleball every day are often surprised at how low their vitamin D is because one, they're trying to protect against skin cancer, so they're staying covered, they're putting sunscreen on, they're keeping their skin covered. And it's hard. It's hard to get enough vitamin D, so you have to test and not make assumptions. Um, we have something here called red cell distribution width. Again, every single one of you has had this done. So what this is part of a CBC. Any of your primary care doctors have ordered a complete blood count at some point. It's a $5 test. It gives us a lot of information. And in there, there's something called an RDW or red cell distribution width. People below 13 are awesome. Above 13, we have a problem. And you can take it a step further. You can take this red cell distribution width and divide it by your albumin, right? It's called the RAR. And people with Parkinson's have a higher RAR. People with cancer and heart disease and kidney disease all have higher RARs and they do worse. So this is something that many of us have. We've all had it. I didn't know what this was 6 months ago. This is new to me, but people have been doing research with the RAR for years, and I'm just slow to catch on. But you can take these two labs that most of you already have in your charts. It's called the red cell distribution width. And then down below in the chemistry section is the albumin. And if you divide one by the other, you get a score. And people who are below a 2.7 are doing amazing. And so I just applied for a $2 million grant to figure out how do you get somebody's RAR lower? How do I make those of you who have a high RAR into the awesome group? So I'm not the only person doing this research. Another group last year published a paper on how Parkinson's patients have a higher RAR. They said, depending on how you look at it, we're going to call the problem 3.1 is where we see a problem. From this angle, 3.4. In our data, 3.4, the game's over. Our data says the people who are 2.7 and below are the ones who are doing amazing. I mean, even a 3.1 is a really low standard. So part of what I want you to say is now that we have this pro PD score, it's like the fine-tuned knob on a microscope. We can see things more granularly here. And so I am thrilled to see that we now have a biomarker that is cheap, it is easy, it seems to be responsive. We don't know to what yet. Um, And so we can see that people who are below a 2.7 are metabolically getting an A plus. And if you take what we have already just talked about, in our data set, we are looking at why is the boat sinking? Metabolically, what is going on with Parkinson's patients? Why are they doing poorly? For the patients who are getting worse, metabolically, is there anything out there that is causing it? And look at, we've already talked about all the heavy hitters. The RAR, the high homocysteine, this red cell distribution width is part of that RAR, the fish oil to chicken ratio, the inflammation chicken egg content. This is a B12 deficiency, and this again is too much chicken, not enough fish. I mean, where this is easy to fix. I just, if those of you who really can't access this, can't afford this, just take some fish oil and some B vitamins, maybe talk to your doc, make sure it's not going to interfere with anything. But I think there's some real value into knowing where you're starting from, having a really clear goal of, hey, I am trying to get my homocyst, like of all, anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so here, I just said awesome is less than 2.7. Okay, and then just to wrap up, there are a couple of things that are really confusing. Or I'll start with the ones that are surprising. I think really surprising to us is I have blood sugar. I have nagged many of you about your blood sugar over the years. That the data does seem to say the higher a person's blood sugar, the faster their brain atrophies. People with diabetes, I think, are 4 times more likely to go on to get Parkinson's. So there is so much overlap between blood sugar and brain neurodegeneration. I have really stayed on my patient's case about keeping their blood sugar low. Interestingly, our data says it doesn't really matter like much at all. It's just not even close to a major driver of Parkinson's outcomes. It doesn't mean that I want you to go give yourself diabetes or that it's good for you, but in terms of the things that make your Parkinson's symptoms more severe, it does not appear that your blood sugar is a major driver. So I guess I was wrong about that, or this maybe the next group who, a different group in a different country will say something different. Who knows? But I found this very surprising. What I find completely perplexing, infuriating, frustrating are some things like this. So what we are looking at here, up top, you have what looks like the higher a person's hair sodium level, the fewer Parkinson's symptoms they have. Down here, it looks like the lower a person's blood sodium, the fewer symptoms they have. Right? Like this is statistically significant. The data is clear. Like this isn't a surprise. It matches a whole bunch of other things we're seeing from a whole bunch of different directions. We are not talking about how much salt you're eating. We are talking about, we are describing metabolic mismanagement. When that hand is being dealt, some of you are putting it in the too much, deposit it all in my hair. Some of you are putting it in your blood. I don't know what's going on here, and it's keeping me awake at nights trying to figure out. I'm calling people from any university I can find who might have some experience in electrolyte regulation as it pertains to neurodegeneration. Um, so what I can say is that these data are real, right? It's statistically significant. High hair and low blood sodium seems to be good prognostic indicator of outcomes in Parkinson's. People with that picture look better. And we don't understand why. So there are things that I don't want you to act on. This doesn't mean go salt your food. We are talking about please, let's join this study. Let's put more energy and funding towards trying to understand biomarkers. There's this idea in medicine. I think this is my last slide. There's this idea in medicine that that the more expensive and extravagant the biomarker and more invasive it is, the more meaningful it is. And the stuff that we are talking about here, some of them were $5. I mean, for a couple $100, you can address everything that we talked about here today. Just kind of in summary, things that all of you can do for free. You can download the Parkinson symptom tracking app. It costs no money. It's available on iOS and Android. And just like people with diabetes have the hemoglobin A1C, people with prostate cancer have a PSA. Parkinson's patients should be tracking their pro-PD because every one of you tells a different story, right? You want to know where you started, you want to know your journey over time. You're all going to be spending decades living with this, and it's a really nice to kind of be able to put a little flag down and say, all right, this week this is how I was doing. And so that's free, and you should all be using that. And then what we're doing is, now that we have labs, we are almost at a point now where we can take your data, and I would love a conversation about this. I'm trying to figure out, are you my target audience? Is my target audience patients with Parkinson's or your providers? But what this red line represents is the average rate of Parkinson's disease progression. By the time most people are diagnosed, they have a 500 and they get worse at about 50 points a year, so that most people get about 10 good years before things start stinking. So I want to keep all my patients down here. And so what we can do now is you can answer some questions about what you've been eating and what kind of exercise you've been doing and how much sleep you've been getting. You can drag in your aura data or just tell us what time you went to bed. But the most exciting part is you can drag in your lab tests and it'll say, hey, based on what your homocysteine levels and your vitamin D levels and your bad night's sleep and the fact that you're still eating dairy and not exercising, here's what we predict your next 10 years is going to look like. And so what we're trying to do is figure out if we can help you identify where the holes are in the bottom of the boat, will that be a wake-up call for you? Is education medicine? And I don't think most patients with Parkinson's truly are sophisticated computer literate enough to be able to use that. The million people with Parkinson's in the United States, like many of you can, but most people cannot. And so what I'm describing here is a little more complicated. Than what I think most patients want. But I don't know that your providers want it. So, any thought? I'm putting something together so that I'm trying to solve that problem, so that you can all press this button, order this lab test, and it will come with a nice little report that says, "Hey, we measured dear Doctor so and so, your patient Betty Smith ordered this lab testing. The reason we ordered vitamin D is because there are 38 studies that say low vitamin D puts a patient at increased risk of worse outcomes. We measured Betty's vitamin D levels. Lo and behold, she's low. She's a 30. We're recommending 60 to 80. Please consider a vitamin D supplement in maintaining a target range in this patient, and let you and your doctor work it out from there. So we are trying to kind of problem solve and make it so that I don't imagine changing doctor behavior. I don't imagine all of you logging into a complicated system that lets you do all this. So I'm trying to make it so that a machine can do it for us and that you can just, with the push of a button, it'll spit out, here's what you can do that will make the biggest difference, specifically in terms of labs, but all of it. Okay, I'll take questions if anyone has it. That's an hour, but I can stick around for a few minutes of
Yeah.
questions.
So there's a question on the chat here.
I will be at WPC. I'm not presenting on any big stage. I have a couple posters, one on financial health in Parkinson's, one on sexual health in Parkinson's, and one on the validation of that pro-PD scale.
When is that?
at the World Parkinson Congress in May in Phoenix. But I will post the posters. Like I'll put them on my LinkedIn page or Facebook or Parkinson School.
I will be there. Are there any other presenters you recommend listening to? And I'm super happy you're putting your posters there. You're brilliant.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, I mean, come on, how brilliant is it for me to let me announce to all of you, rich people do better than poor people. I mean, come on. I mean, and it's so frustrating because it's a big pro and I don't know why, right? Is it stress? Is it that poor people are eating worse foods lined in tin cans with plastic lining out of processed, packaged, preserved stuff? You know, rich people are eating organic and fresh fruits and vegetables and getting good night's sleep on their Tempur-Pedic mattress. I mean, I don't know why, but I don't think as researchers in a community we can ignore that. It's one of the biggest drivers of progression, being poor and being lonely.
Well, maybe people have to be happy with what they have rather than the rich poor thing, Lori. You have to look at it like, are you happy with what you have, whether it's a lot or a little?
People with who make less than $80,000 a year are doing worse. They just have worse Parkinson's outcomes. And
What about the Mediterranean diet?
Great question. So that's kind of where it all started is so the Mediterranean diet, some researchers back in the 40s said, hey, we think that people in Greece get less heart disease. And so they looked at a couple things that they came up with 10 foods that make a Mediterranean diet. And so the problem that we have with the Mediterranean diet is every single one of us thinks something different. When everyone thinks they know what a Mediterranean diet is, and we all think it's something different, right? So like to get your olive oil point, if you're a researcher wanting to know how Mediterranean is Lynn's diet, did Lynn have 4 tablespoons of olive oil per day for the last week? And if she did, then she gets that point for olive oil. So just know that when researchers study the Mediterranean diet, it's very different than what is happening in your head when you think that you eat a Mediterranean diet, right? And so what has happened is it just happened to be one of the only nicely defined diets that was out there. So we've studied it for arthritis, we've studied it for heart disease, we've studied it for cancer, we studied it for Parkinson's, and we keep trying to this one diet that someone labeled 40 years ago 60 years ago now, is going to help Parkinson's. And so about 10 years ago, they improved upon the Mediterranean diet and started to use a mind diet. This is kind of like a spin-off on the Mediterranean diet, but it was designed for Alzheimer's disease. And they took it a step further by saying, don't just eat vegetables, you need to eat leafy greens, and you have to avoid dairy and sweets and pastries. That was how the mind is different than the Mediterranean. What I did is I worked backwards. Followed 2,200 people for a decade. And the people who were in the best shape with Parkinson's disease, the people who were in the best shape 10 years after I had met them, were eating tons of spices, eating organic. Cook most of their food at home. They have a half cup of fresh vegetables 5 times a week. They have a half cup of nuts and seeds daily, 1 cup of fresh fruit per day, 2 tablespoons of olive oil per day, 2 tablespoons of olive oil of seafood, 2 servings of seafood per week, 2 glasses of wine a week. Um, Legumes were not, oh, that wasn't in mine. They avoid fried food, they avoid red meat, they avoid soda, they avoid dairy, they avoid sweets and pastries and refined grains, nothing from a can, no chicken and no pork. So the purple is my attempt at saying, and the data says that both Mediterranean and Mind and Pro 21 are all good. If we are going to compare them, the Pro 21 is more associated with better Parkinson's outcomes than either the Mediterranean or the Mind. So that's the Pro 21 diet versus Mediterranean.
Somebody
Should
had,
you take fish oil every day? You should do whatever it takes to keep your DHA level above a 4 and your EPA level above a 4 and your DHA level above a 3 or 2, whatever I said it was. My thoughts on low ferritin. So certainly ferritin was not associated with better or worse outcomes in any direction here. The reason I test it is because I'm worried about it being high. Ferritin is a measure of inflammation. It's called an acute phase reactant. And so I am actually testing ferritin to see if it is high as a measure of inflammation. I think ferritin being low as a measure of iron deficiency makes me nervous for a whole bunch of reasons. One, because I think that's been kind of overinterpreted. I don't worry about low ferritin much. And two, without getting complicated, there are some things on people's labs that Parkinson's labs that look like low iron.
Want to go to Fox Meadow now?
Those people are doing better.
Yeah, just a minute.
The people who look like a normal doctor would look at this blood work and say, hey, it looks like you might be a little low in iron. Those in our research are the people who honestly are doing great. And so I'm just going to say I kind of ignore the ferritin unless it's high, and I don't ever really see people flagged as low. And our data does not say that I should be concerned about it.
Okay, great, thank you.
What supplement should you take to increase the vitamin D?
That one I showed in the
You take
picture,
vitamin
it's by a
B12.
company called Protocol for Life. I'll write it down. My favorite one is Protocol for Life, and it has to be the super high dose. And if you swallow it, it doesn't work. You have to dissolve it under your tongue.
Which medication is this?
The
B.
B12.
In it?
Does that have cobalt in it?
Yep, sure. Yep, yes.
Is that all you need? There was
My
another.
How
Cheers.
often should the test be done? I would say I do it once a year for my patients. Every once in a while, I have an overachiever
thank
who
you.
just looks so absolutely perfect one year that I tell them they're off the hook for 2, that, they could skip a year. But, for $389 or whatever it was, $400 for like all of this stuff, if you can afford doing that once a year, I think it's worth its weight in gold. So once a year.
Another
And then the
bottle.
Pro PD, how often should you do the Pro PD? There's a whole YouTube video on how to use the
Yes.
Pro PD.
Tag them up and stick them out.
I will just say that if you when you are using the Pro PD for the very first time, I'm a data nerd. I want it, like, humans bounce around. Humans are variable. I think your score is going to be higher when you're irritable after a bad night's sleep or low blood sugar or you fight with your spouse than it is when you wake up happy. And so humans vary in how they perceive things. And so when I started to track my Pro PD score, I did it once a week for 8 weeks, just because I wanted to answer the question, hey, moving forward for the rest of my life, how much do I bounce around? Okay, now that I know I am always somewhere between 0 and 44, right? Now I can move forward. Who cares if I'm up 30 points? It means nothing. I'm always up 30 points, down 30 points, whatever. I'm plus or minus 44 points because that's my normal. Some of you are plus or minus 200. Some of you have had the same exact score for years. It's absolutely fascinating how predictable, consistent you are. So I say quarterly. If things are pretty stable, you're doing well, do it quarterly before a doctor's visits so that you can kind of bring your report into your doctor. And then if you're making a medication change, hey, I'm going to go vegetarian. I'm going to start following the Pro 21 diet. I'm going to start B vitamins and I'm going to start levodopa. I would absolutely take my Pro PD weekly so that you can tell the future you, hey, look, remember the last time I changed my diet? It was 4 weeks before I really started feeling better. Like, that's useful information for you
There was
moving
another
forward.
bottle next to the Protocol for Life. There's another bottle. What was that bottle?
Oh, the next to the protocol. Okay, so that's a good question. So what
Get over Raymond.
person No, the question that is being asked is to make your B vitamins work, you need two things. And one of them is the B12 under your tongue. The other one is this active B complex by Integrative Therapeutics. This is the best I have found. It is about $18 a bottle that will last 2 months. The bottle says 2 capsules a day. I tell my patients one cap is plenty. So 1 cap a day for 2 months, I believe, is about $18. It makes it quite affordable, but for most of my patients, if you swallow this B complex and you dissolve this B12 under your tongue, for most people, that's really all you need to get the job done. Oh, she is terrific. Thank you.
Lori,
Should we can be concerned about the B6 deficiency that they're connecting to Cinemet?
No, is the short answer. I was a reviewer on that paper years ago. It's funny that it's just becoming picked up and popular. Um, I think it's been 6 people have had a seizure. I mean, the thing is, that's what we're doing is we're making you not deficient. I'm giving you all the B vitamins that you need to spin all your wheels. I think the one of the things I am doing it's worse than that because it's not just the seizures. I think what you're referring to are 6 people or so have now had seizures from carbidopa depleting them from B6. And so the recommendation is make sure a person's not B6 deficient before you start. But for all of the millions of doses of Cinemet that are filled, I believe 6 people in total have now reported this. So it's very, very, very rare. But that's the whole point. That's what we're saying here is Cinemet, carbidopa, levodopa interferes with your ability. It sucks you dry of your B vitamins. I love Cinemet. I want you all to use carbidopa, levodopa. I want you to get the benefits of that medicine, but it's not all roses.
Right.
Right? You get the benefit of it, but with that means you have to really work to take extra B vitamins and do
Trade-off.
the testing once a year to make sure that you're not low.
It's okay.
Thank you. It's a fair
You
trade-off.
order the test from you?
So what I did is I set up, so I do it in my clinic with all my patients all the time. If you have a doctor who will order any of these lab tests, please go work with them and get them all done. Some of you do not, you're caught in the middle. You're not my patient and you don't have a doctor who will do these lab tests. And so what Susan and I did is there is a company called Rupa and they have covered all of the legal bases and they have made it. So the law says that the only legal way to get labs is if you have a doctor in your state that will interpret them and sign off on them. And so this company, Rupa, said, we will do that. We will hire a doctor in all 50 states and we'll be the central hub. And so I built an account with Rupa. I put all of my Parkinson lab tests on there. And so now any one of you can go to that link and you can order these tests. You'll get a kit in the mail for the blood, labs, and the hair. Take it to any Quest Draw site anywhere in the country, and you'll get your results emailed to you about a week later. 2 weeks for the hair, 1 week for the blood. And so that is what we set up just as a way for those of you who want this information to get it. Just to complicate things, New York has some ridiculous rule that says it is illegal to ship labs outside of the state of New York. So things like the hair test will always say this test is not available to New York residents. I don't know a work around that. If you all want to get political and change the law, that would be fabulous. If you want to lie and say use your sister in Jersey's address, that's up to you and your ethics. I mean, I'm just saying, like, it is so crazy that New York won't let you analyze your own hair for minerals and metals. So not sure what's up with that, but that is a little glitch in the matrix for those of you who may be in New York.
So can your doctor order the hair test?
Yeah, and your doctor just needs an account. I use a company called Doctors Data. That's who's been doing hair testing for researchers for 50, 60 years now. I mean, for those of you who don't know, the history is amazing. My master's degree and my master's thesis is on lithium deficiency and Parkinson's. And the reason I did that is because back in the 40s, there was a chemist who was sent to figure out in Eastern Europe why people with joint problems went to this spring, people with mental illness went to this spring, and people with skin disorders went to that other spring. And his job as a chemist was to figure out what was different in the springs. And the people with joint problems, it had a bunch of sulfur in it. And the people who all went because they were depressed, that spring had a bunch of lithium in it. And then, so that kind of opened the door to lithium research. And now I bet you there have been 30 papers over the last 50 years that say the lower the lithium in any water supply, the more suicides there are in that city. Like we have known that low lithium in the groundwater increases societal risk of impulse control disorders, suicides, and psychosis, but suicides in particular. So neurons need a lot of lithium, 5 times more lithium than the other body parts. So when lithium gets low, your neurons take the hit.
Do you
And so I
recommend
was
lithium
interested
orate?
in the lithium suicide connection. And so when it was came time to do my master's work, I chose to look at lithium deficiency in Parkinson's patients. And the only way to measure a hair lithium level is in hair. So that was why I started doing hair tests in all of these people. I didn't, it is strange. I get it, but I'm not doing it because I'm looking for heavy metals. I'm doing it because I was trying to study mineral deficiencies of ultra trace minerals. Those minerals aren't in high enough concentration in the blood. Lithium orotate, yeah, 5 mg lithium orotate for those who are asking, especially if you're deficient. I'm a little lazy. I tend to do 20 mg 2 or 3 times a week. I'm just kind of personality wise, I'm more of a bolus sporadic. I don't like doing a lot of stuff consistently, so I don't really care if people do 20 mg of lithium twice a week or 5 mg a day.
Is there a good multivitamin to take?
Um, I don't have a good answer for you. Statistically, our data says that people who are taking a multivitamin are in fact doing better. And I have probably failed all my patients for the last 20 years by not recommending a good multi. I mean, the companies, for those of you who don't know, 50% of the supplements sold over the counter don't have in them what the label says they have in them. Quality control is a really big problem in over the counter supplements. So you don't need to buy anything from our clinic. Like I said, I don't make money off of any of it anywhere anyway. But if we carry it on the Seattle Integrative Medicine website, that means that brand is kind of they're called medical grade, pharmaceutical grade supplements, and each batch is third party tested for purity and potency. So you're paying an extra $1 or $2, but what you're paying for is them to guarantee that what you're getting is what it says it's getting. And so you don't need to buy it from our clinic, but if you see, oh, they carry Protocol for Life, B12 sublingual, go find sublingual Protocol for Life B12. That's the brand we endorse. That's something I can stand behind. If we carry it, it's quality, even if you don't get it from our place.
Lori, this is a lot of information. Now, if people want to do these tests,
Yeah.
then they get the results back. Should they call your Seattle Integrative Medicine and talk to who?
Well, I mean, what in theory? So both this class you're recording, and I'm sure it'll be posted, and then on my Parkinson's school, I have a lab class that is even more detailed than this. And in theory, you should be able to take your own labs and sit here and watch the class and take a red pen and say, all right, vitamin D is my problem, homocysteine is my problem, and hair cobalt is my problem, right? And then after listening to this class and that other class, you know what to do. Yes, I'd be happy to help. We have amazing docs in my clinic are happy to help, but really my point in being here is to make it like to teach you to fish. In theory, like I want you and your doctors to be measuring your vitamin D levels and your homocysteine levels. I mean, I don't want to be the bottleneck to you understanding your own metabolism and biochemistry. Like I want all of you to go back to your doctors and say, hey, why isn't anyone, you have me on a prescription that depletes my B6 and B12 levels and it raises my homocysteine. And there are 140 studies that say the higher my homocysteine, the more I'm likely to get dementia. Do you think we could keep tabs on my homocysteine? Why haven't you been keeping tabs on my homocysteine? Like I'm watching these one of your seminars that say keep it below a 10.
Oh, this
And
is
it's not just me. If you pull up the head guy at Mayo just wrote a paper 2 years ago called Homocysteine, B12, and levodopa. What's the problem? And in the paper, he says, for 25 years, we have been telling you the homocysteine depletes the body of B vitamins. B vitamin depletion raises your homocysteine, and that does not bode well for patients.
Well, it's
You
kind of
either have to
confusing.
start testing homocysteine or just giving everyone B vitamins. But the name of the paper is What is the Problem? This is the head of the movement disorders, Ashclog, however you say his name, at Mayo, asking other neurologists, what's the problem? When are you going to start testing homocysteine or giving B vitamins? I am not the only person saying this.
so we're trying to educate our doctors
Mhm.
with your help.
Thank you. Donna, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, are you aware of that almost all immediate release cinema pills are yellow? And when you look at the other ingredients in those pills besides carbidopa, levodopa, they contain yellow number 6 and number 10 that have cadmium in them. That's a cadmium heavy metal. And they're giving Parkinson's heavy metal pills. And
Yep.
the yellow number 6 and number 10, I know they're supposed to get it out of stuff, but it's only approved for drugs and cosmetics, not for food. Yet people with Parkinson's are taking millions of these yellow pills, like eating them.
Well, the
So,
good news is I just looked at the cadmium levels in 600 of you, and that's not a major, very few
okay,
people are high in cadmium. So you can sleep well at night that the few patients who are high in cadmium tend to smoke a lot of pot and tobacco.
I see. That's good news then. I was worried about that. So you just cured me of that. And then I was wondering if you were aware of Dr. Greg he's a functional medicine, and he just released this book. He does testing too, but they're very expensive tests. And do you recommend getting these if you can afford it? Should the people that can afford it get these more expensive tests like the gut test?
Listen, there is a time and a place to do a gut test. I mean, I have patients in my 1,000 active patients right now. I bet you 500 of them have had, no, of my 1,000 active patients, I bet you 150 of them have had a very thorough gut eval. 15%, maybe. I mean, like, if you have money coming out your ears and you want to know what's going on, I mean, for $400 for me to tell you you're not eating enough fiber, I mean, I love data. Love data. If you have $400 and you want to give me some data, I will tell you. But I'm also almost like telepathic at this point. It's going to say you're not eating enough fiber, right? Like, and so if I can just get you eating more fiber, if we can clean up your gut, I can save you the $400 on the stool test. And so, and I do just to kind of address the all these different providers offering these different packages in these different what I will say to that is what I have attempted to do here is get me out of it, right? And so there are a lot of really, really smart people functional medicine docs, movement disorder docs, naturopathic doctors, PhDs, and people themselves with Parkinson's with a lot of experience. There are a lot of really smart people out there who have a lot of really good ideas, right? I don't know who's right or who's wrong. What I have done with what I'm talking to you about today is nothing that I have said to you is my opinion. Like I am telling you, I just went and I spent the last 13 years following thousands of you over time. And I'm telling you, the people who have a vitamin D level between 60 and 80 are doing the best. I'm telling you, the people with a homocysteine level below 10 are doing the best. If Greg or Steve or Bob or some of these other doctors can come to the table and say, hey, people whose, stem cells are injected in, this direction, or they use peptide BGC757, or they use red lights, or they use all of these things, like all of that has some potential, maybe. But it's until someone brings me data that says the people who do it do better.
Laurie, just a quick question. How do you define doing the best?
Well, so I'm tracking outcomes with this validated measure called the patient reported outcomes in Parkinson's disease. It's called the PRO-PD. Even if somebody came to me and said that UPDRS test that we do, finger tapping and arm swing, when I start injecting these peptides, when I start using these stem cells, when I start using these red lights or pulsed electromagnetic fields or drinking this hydrogen water, look at my improvement as measured by X. Like, I don't care how we measure it. It's just that there are a lot of people selling stuff and they're not measuring it. And do we have time for me to go on a 2-minute soapbox?
No,
No.
2 minutes, and then we're gonna tell you how much we love you, and we have to go.
Listen, I have had an entire amazing study ruined by the placebo response. I just need you all to understand that the placebo response, which happens to all humans in all studies, it doesn't matter what we study, there is always a placebo response. If you think you're going to get better, you do get a little bit better. The problem is the placebo response is mediated by dopamine. When you get hopeful, you make dopamine. When you get excited, you make dopamine. When you experience desire, you make dopamine. And so the placebo response is extra difficult in Parkinson's disease because anytime you get an experimental therapy, a new provider who's charming, something that makes you hopeful, even participating in a clinical trial, you get excited and you make dopamine. And you know what happens when you may have a placebo response in Parkinson's? All your Parkinson symptoms go away. Right? Really, literally go away. Your arm swings, your tremor dissolves. And it has nothing to do with the therapy. It's that you just got hopeful about the therapy, right? And so I ran a double-blind placebo-controlled trial, and this guy was snorting saline up his nose, but he thought it was glutathione, and he would send me videos. Here's me trying to eat soup with a spoon before glutathione. He'd snort glutathione. Here's me eating soup with a spoon after. Sent pictures, the whole study. I got videos like this. When he was done, it was saline. We even sent his used syringes away to a third-party lab to have them analyzed to see if we mixed them up. And we had to conclude glutathione is no better than saline. But glutathione was good. But this one guy in the saline group had such a huge improvement that the whole study went up in smoke because we had to conclude glutathione, the improvement we saw in glutathione was not better than the improvement Jack had. Was so impressed. So anyway, I'm just saying, anyone who goes and gets stem cells, and do you know there's this research that says the more money you spend on an intervention, the more effective it is, placebo-wise, the stronger the placebo response.
Let me just say DBS.
Yeah, right. Expensive, invasive, you got it. Yeah.
I think we have to start doing some mindfulness work.
Yeah, it's
right. Right.
You don't believe in DBS is helpful?
I love DBS. I recommend a lot of people for DBS. You just have to be the right person and the right team and the right set of symptoms at the right time.
Right.
I'm a huge fan.
But that's interesting how much is placebo effect.
Oh, it's so huge. And the how and if it works that well for Parkinson's, what's our problem? Why haven't we used to our way to figured out how to harness it or prescribe it or use, you know, why can't we find better ways to teach you to, if you can change your thought patterns and have that generate an entirely different amount of dopamine, so much so that your symptoms improve, then what are you doing? Do it every Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday. Like, figure out how to brainwash yourself to make a placebo response. Why are we not studying the therapeutic use of placebo? So, I don't think that's a bad thing. I just think that, when you see a video of somebody on Facebook who says, I did this expensive intervention and look at how much better I am, that is just very disingenuous if you understand how placebo responses work and Parkinson's works, and you really, I mean, anyway, if you have experience and something's working for you, great. Please share it. The reason we have to do research is because it's easy to get people to feel better and endorse any intervention for a while. Where it's really difficult is to show that use of X makes a meaningful difference, measurable difference in most patients over time. And that's what I'm trying to do for you.
And let me just say, with agentic AI, if people keep their own data, they could create their own neurologist using agentic AI and
Yep.
using the probe PD scores and using
Yep.
all this information, using the tape, the transcript from this meeting, feeding it into your AI engine. So that's where we should be going.
That's where we're headed.
That's a good
Yep.
help. Yeah, we have that help out there. Well, Lori, I think you inspired everybody. I wanted everybody to see who didn't know you to meet you tonight. And I think we're on a track. I think everybody, whether it's the mindful work or the PD Pro PD, I think we have a lot to do, a lot of ways to help ourselves. And we are blessed to have you, Lori. Your passion is it inspires us all.
It's palatable for sure. Thank you.
Well, thank you. But I do want to say that we are a team, and every single person who joined, who has trusted me with their data, who has joined the PD study. And the other thing is, every piece of data that I brought to you today, all of these lab data, somebody who's on this call today donated the money to make all of this possible. And so I just want to say we are very much a team and a community, and all of what I'm sharing with you today could not be possible without the people in this room. So thank you.
Thank you, Lori. We are a community, and that's what's wonderful about this community. We're all in this together.